Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I think is pretty important to most people. It's how to figure out what really matters in life, and then how to actually make sure your everyday actions line up with those values. We've got some really cool material that dives deep into the practical steps. I think it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, this is like having a mentor
Yeah.
distilled down into like a couple pages,
Huh?
really cutting through the noise and helping us focus on what actually matters.
Yeah.
So we can have a life that actually feels fulfilling. Like we're not just on autopilot.
So this idea of knowing what truly matters, like what's important to you. In the material we've been going through, there's a story about a guy named Leo. Did anything in particular about his experience stand out to you?
Well, I think Leo's story really hits home for a lot of people because a lot of us have been there.
Mm-hmm.
Like he looked successful on the outside. He was checking off all the boxes that society tells us we're supposed to check off, but he wasn't really happy on the inside. And then his nephew asks him this simple question. And it's like a wake-up call. It makes Leo realize that he's not living for himself. He's living for everyone else.
It's so easy to get caught up in what other people expect of us. And that brings us to this idea of core values. What are those exactly? I mean, beyond just like a phrase you see on a motivational poster, what do they really mean?
Core values are basically the guiding principles that shape your actions and give you a sense of purpose. They're the things that make you feel truly alive and authentic. Like for Leo, it was family, creativity, and freedom. One of the exercises they talk about is just like making a list. Write down the 5 things that you value most. It could be anything. It could be health, honesty, adventure, faith, whatever really resonates with you. Just don't overthink it.
That seems easy enough. But how do we actually use this list? It's one thing to write it down, but how do we make sure those values are actually reflected in our daily life?
That's where it gets really interesting. So you've got this list of core values.
Right.
Now you can use that list to help you make decisions.
Mhm.
So instead of just going with your gut or doing what other people tell you to do, you can ask yourself, does this decision line up with my values? Let's say connection is really important to you, but you keep choosing to spend time alone instead of with your loved ones. That might be a sign that something's off. It's like using your values as a filter.
It's about constantly checking in with yourself. Does this opportunity or this commitment, or even just how I'm spending my time, does it actually honor what I say is important to me? There's this quote from Tony Robbins.
Oh yeah.
It's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently.
Absolutely. And that's the key. It's all about consistency. It's the small, everyday choices
Yeah.
that really add up over time. So you got to make sure those choices are aligned with your core values.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding our values. Now the next step is making decisions with intention. I like the way they use that garden metaphor. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a really cool metaphor. So think of every decision you make as planting a seed. If you plant seeds that align with your values and your goals, they're more likely to grow into something positive, something that enriches your life. But if you're just making decisions on autopilot or based on what other people think you should do, it's like planting weeds. They just take up space and they prevent you from growing.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff and just react to things instead of actually thinking about the bigger picture. So how do we actually become more intentional in our decision-making?
Well, the key is to stop and think before you act. Before you plant that seed, ask yourself, will this choice actually lead me to the life I want? There's an example in the material about getting a promotion. And it's like, yeah, a bigger paycheck sounds great, but what about the impact on your family? What about your stress levels? It's about thinking about the whole picture, not just the surface level stuff.
Digging a little deeper, yeah. And speaking of practical tips, there's that coaching technique. It's a couple questions you can ask yourself before you say yes to something.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So before you commit to anything, just take a minute and ask yourself 2 questions. 1, does this align with my top 3 values? And 2, will I be proud of this decision a year from now? Those 2 questions can really help you filter out the noise and make sure you're staying true to yourself.
Yeah, those are powerful questions. I like that. Now let's talk about mindfulness or everyday awareness. What does that look like practically?
It's basically about being present in the moment. It's about noticing your thoughts and your feelings and the choices you're making as you're making them. Instead of just going through the motions, it's not necessarily about sitting down and meditating for an hour every day. It's more about bringing that awareness into your everyday life.
It's like the difference between driving while you're daydreaming and actually paying attention to the road.
Exactly. And one way to think about it is like your mind is a radio station. Sometimes it's full of static, all these thoughts about the past and the future and worries and what ifs. But if you want to be present, you got to tune in to the right station. And that means pausing, taking a deep breath and just noticing what's happening inside you without judging yourself. You can even set little reminders throughout the day to check in with yourself. How am I feeling right now? Is what I'm doing aligned with my best self? It's those little moments of awareness that really make a difference.
It's like hitting the reset button throughout the day. And speaking of checking in with yourself, there are a few reflective questions that we can ask ourselves regularly to help us stay on track.
Yeah, there are some really good ones in the material. What do I truly value? Am I living in a way that honors those values? Are my choices moving me closer to the life I want or further away? Those questions can really help you get some clarity and make any adjustments you need to make.
So we've talked about values and intentions and mindfulness. Now let's talk about vulnerability. A lot of people see vulnerability as a weakness, but the material we're looking at presents it as a strength.
Yeah, it's a really important shift in perspective. We're often told that we need to be strong and hide our imperfections, but the truth is being vulnerable is actually really courageous. Letting people see the real you with all your flaws and all your complexities, that takes a lot of strength.
It's like trying to be perfect all the time creates this distance between you and other people. But when you're vulnerable, you open yourself up to real connection.
Yeah, and there's this quote from Denzel Washington that I love. He says, "Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship." And I would add to that, hiding is a greater threat to connection than honesty.
So how can we actually start to embrace vulnerability in our own lives? I mean, it can be really uncomfortable, right?
It's definitely a process, and it starts with small steps. Give yourself permission to not have all the answers. Be honest about your feelings with the people you trust. And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. There's this cool little experiment you can try. Next time someone asks how you are, instead of saying, "I'm fine," try giving them a real answer. Just one honest sentence about how you're feeling.
That's a really good challenge. Now let's shift gears and talk about the people we surround ourselves with. There's that saying, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Why is that so important?
Well, the people we spend time with have a huge impact on us. Whether we realize it or not, they can either lift us up and encourage us to grow, or they can hold us back without even meaning to. It's like if you're trying to climb a mountain. If you're surrounded by people who are also trying to reach the top, it's going to be a lot easier than if you're with people who are content just sitting at the base camp.
It's not about judging people or cutting people out of your life. It's more about being aware of the influences around you and making sure they're aligned with your goals. There's that story about David starting his wellness business.
Yeah, David's a great example of the importance of finding your tribe. His old friends weren't really supportive of his new business, but then he found a group of entrepreneurs who were all on the same journey. And that made all the difference. It gave him the encouragement and the belief he needed to succeed.
Speaking of practical tips, there's an exercise for taking stock of your social circle. How does that work?
It's pretty simple. Write down the 5 people you spend the most time with, and then next to each name, put a plus, a minus, or a 0. Plus means they have a positive influence on you. Minus means negative, 0 means neutral. It's just a quick way to get a sense of the overall energy of your relationships. And remember, it's a two-way street. You're also influencing the people around you.
Now let's talk about our environment and our daily habits. How do those play a role in our personal growth?
Our environment can have a really big impact on our mindset and our behavior, even if we don't realize it. It's like our surroundings are constantly sending us messages about what's important and what's expected of us. There are a lot of small things you can do to create an environment that supports your goals, like keeping healthy snacks in plain sight or putting a book on your bedside table so you'll be more likely to read. Even just decluttering your space can make a huge difference.
It's about setting yourself up for success, right? And I love that idea of creating a growth corner. What's that all about?
A growth corner is basically a designated space in your home where you can focus on personal development. It could be a comfy chair, a quiet corner of a room, whatever works for you. It's a place where you can reflect, journal reads, set intentions. It's like a physical reminder that you're committed to your own growth.
I love that. Now let's talk about the bigger picture, the idea of committing to lifelong growth and learning. Why is that so important?
Because life is a journey. It's not a destination. It's like a river. It's constantly flowing and changing. And if you want to thrive, you got to go with the flow. You got to be willing to learn and adapt. Fulfillment isn't just about achieving a specific goal. It's about the process of growth and discovery. There's a story in the material about a teacher named Elena who discovered a passion for storytelling.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And it just shows that you never know where life's going to take you. You just got to be open to new possibilities. And the great thing is, you don't need to make huge changes all at once. You can start small. Just pick up a book on a new subject, or have a conversation with someone who has a different perspective, or try a new hobby. Even spending 15 minutes a day learning something new can make a big difference over time.
It all adds up, right?
It does.
And I like that suggestion of reflecting on what you learned each week. It's a good way to stay motivated. And speaking of motivation, there's another great quote. This one's from Brian Tracy.
Yeah, he says, your life only gets better when you get better. And it's so true. The more you invest in yourself, the more you get out of life.
Yeah, let's talk about setbacks. They're a part of life. Nobody's perfect. How can we deal with setbacks in a healthy way?
The key is to not let setbacks define you. You know, everybody makes mistakes. It's how you learn and grow. It's what you do after a setback that matters. There's a story in the material about a guy named Theo, whose online business didn't do so well at first.
What was his secret?
He changed his mindset. Instead of asking, why did I fail? He started asking, what can I learn from this? And that allowed him to identify the areas where he needed to improve, and eventually found success.
So it's about reframing those moments that feel like the end of the world.
Exactly. Instead of saying, this is the end, try saying, this is information. Every setback is an opportunity to learn and grow.
I like that. Now let's wrap up with the importance of reflection, celebration, and gratitude. Why are those so essential?
Because they help you stay grounded and focused on what really matters. Reflection helps you process your experiences and learn from them. It's like digesting your food. You got to break it down to get the nutrients. Celebration helps you appreciate your accomplishments and stay motivated. And gratitude helps you appreciate what you have instead of focusing on what you don't have. It's like a superpower that can help you through tough times.
And the material suggests some simple practices we can incorporate into our lives.
Yeah, like taking some time each month to reflect on what you're proud of, what challenges you overcame, and what you're grateful for. And on a daily basis, try writing down 3 things you're thankful for in the morning and 1 thing you did well in the evening. It's those little habits that can make a big difference.
I love that. Now the material ends by bringing it all back to that garden metaphor. It's a nice way to tie it all together.
It is. It's like a reminder that personal growth is an ongoing process. It takes time and effort, but the rewards are so worth it. You choose the seeds, you plant them with intention, you nurture the soil, you tend to the weeds, and you keep watering and pruning, and eventually you'll have a beautiful garden.
So the takeaway here is that we have the power to create a life that's truly fulfilling. It starts with knowing what matters to us, making conscious choices, nurturing meaningful relationships, and committing to lifelong growth.
And remembering that it's a journey, not a destination. There's no finish line. It's about enjoying the process and becoming the best version of yourself.
And that's a great place to end our deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And before we go, we have a question for you. What's one thing that really resonated with you from our conversation today? And what's one small step you can take today to bring your life a little bit more in line with what truly matters to you?
We hope you'll take some time to reflect on that. And until next time, keep exploring what truly matters.
And take care.